She smiled through it all, through the insults, through the violence, even through the killings, and no one, not even the man who thought he owned her, saw what was coming next, because when she finally turned the tables, justice wasn't loud, it was silent, calculated, and terrifyingly satisfying. This is the story of Evelyn Marlowe. To the outside world, Richard Marlowe was a respected businessman, wealthy, powerful, untouchable. But behind closed doors he was a tyrant, cruel, controlling, reminding Evelyn daily that without his name she was nothing. "You're lucky I keep you around," he'd sneer with a drink in his hand. "Without me you'd vanish and no one would even notice." Evelyn never argued, never raised her voice, she just lowered her eyes, and smiled faintly, and Richard believed that smile meant surrender. But he was wrong. Evelyn wasn't surrendering, she was studying, she was calculating. Every night while he drowned in bourbon she watched, memorizing his passwords, his safe combinations, his ledger filled with bribes, embezzlement, and secrets powerful enough to ruin him. And when a young employee from his company vanished after threatening to expose him, Evelyn realized the truth. She wasn't married to a businessman, she was married to a killer, and that faint smile she carried began to mean something very different. 2 months later, Richard's business partner turned up dead in what police called an accident. Another associate disappeared. To the town, Richard was the grieving friend, but Evelyn had seen the blood on his cuff. She knew he was behind it all. And while Richard thought she was his silent, obedient wife, Evelyn was becoming something else entirely, his shadow, his witness, his silent collector of evidence. Every crime, every lie, every drop of blood she documented, and through it all she never flinched, she only smiled. One night it all came crashing down. Richard stormed into the dining room, furious after a failed deal, and hurled a glass across the floor, shards scattering like his rage. He turned to Evelyn expecting fear, but instead she looked at him and whispered calmly, "You shouldn't drink so much, it makes it harder to cover the stains." Richard froze, and then she slid a folder across the table. Inside, photographs, bank statements, recordings, every secret he thought buried now sat in front of him. Evelyn leaned in and said softly, "You underestimated me, Richard, and that was your mistake." From that moment, the balance of power shifted. Richard tried to threaten, to bribe, even to beg. But Evelyn had already prepared for everything. She had lawyers lined up, law enforcement ready, and every shred of evidence locked away where he couldn't touch it. When the police stormed the mansion, Richard didn't fight. He only stared at Evelyn, sitting at the head of the table where he once ruled, and she smiled, calm, victorious, untouchable. Justice had been served. But Evelyn's story carries a warning. Never mistake silence for weakness. Never confuse obedience for loyalty, and never forget, when someone smiles through the pain, it may not be surrender, it may be preparation. Yet just when Evelyn thought it was over, the past came knocking outside the courthouse. Moments after Richard was taken away, she found a note tucked under her windshield, no signature, just 5 chilling words. "You smiled too soon." Her hands trembled as she read it, but her lips curled into that same quiet smile, because Evelyn knew the real game had only just begun. At first, she told herself it was nothing, maybe a cruel prank, but deep down, Evelyn knew Richard had never worked alone. His empire, his wealth, his crimes, they stretched far beyond him. Days after the trial, strange things began to happen. Evelyn's phone rang at midnight, silence on the line, her lights flickered though the power was steady, and more than once she swore she saw a shadow standing at the edge of her driveway, watching, waiting. She tried to ignore it, but then came the newspaper, delivered to her door though she hadn't subscribed in years. On the front page, circled in red ink, the obituary of the young employee who had disappeared months earlier, a victim Evelyn believed Richard killed. But scrawled across the paper were 6 chilling words. "We know what you did." Her heart pounded, because whoever left it wasn't accusing Richard, they were accusing her. The cruel irony. While Evelyn had spent years documenting Richard's crimes, someone out there believed she wasn't the victim, but the accomplice, and they were watching her every move. The police brushed it off as intimidation, told her she was safe, but Evelyn wasn't convinced. She had lived too long in Richard's world to believe in safety. One night, she found her back door unlocked, the alarm disabled, and on the kitchen counter, a single glass of bourbon. Richard's drink of choice. Someone had been inside, someone who wanted her to know. Evelyn wasn't the hunter anymore. She was the hunted. And just as she began piecing it together, she realized something chilling. The evidence she had hidden, Richard's ledger, the recordings, the photographs, they were gone, stolen. In their place was a note written in the same sharp hand as before, 3 words this time. "We're not finished." Her breath caught, because she finally understood. Richard wasn't the only monster. There were others, powerful ones, and they were ready to finish what he couldn't. Evelyn stared into the darkness of her home, her quiet smile trembling for the first time, because she knew. The real nightmare hadn't ended, it had only just begun. Evelyn Marlowe thought she had defeated Richard. But victory turned to terror when she discovered the truth. Richard had never acted alone, and now, the shadows he once commanded were coming for her. The first strike was subtle. Her evidence, gone. Stolen from the very place she had locked it away, in its place, a warning. "We're not finished." The second strike was personal. The sound of her late mother's favorite lullaby playing softly from the piano in her empty living room. Evelyn stood frozen, every note echoing a promise. They had been inside again. And the third strike was undeniable, a car following her for days, same make, same model, never close enough to see the driver, but always there, watching, waiting. Evelyn realized these weren't random threats. They were reminders. Richard may have fallen, but his empire was alive. His allies were testing her, measuring her fear. She tried to fight back. She traced calls, installed cameras, even reached out to the detectives who once praised her bravery, but no one believed her now. Without the evidence, she looked paranoid, unstable. Some even whispered she had fabricated the crimes to destroy Richard herself. And that's when the phone rang, a distorted voice. "Come, hunting. You smiled when he fell, but you'll cry when we rise." The line went dead, and Evelyn's blood ran cold, because it wasn't just about revenge anymore, it was about power, and she was standing in the way. That night, she opened her mailbox to find something new. Not a note, not a warning, but a photograph. It was her, sleeping in her own bed, the image taken from inside her house. Evelyn's quiet smile faltered for the first time, because now she knew, this wasn't intimidation, this was escalation. And taped to the back of the photo was a key, not hers, but to a place she recognized instantly. Richard's abandoned office downtown. They were luring her in, daring her to play their game. And Evelyn, with fear burning into determination, realized she had no choice but to accept. Because if she didn't, she wouldn't survive long enough to smile again. Kindly consider subscribing to the channel for more true crime stories just like this one.